Revenge with Karen.
The smell of a credit union lobby is a very specific cocktail of despair. It's equal parts floor wax, stale coffee from a break room that hasn't been deep cleaned since the Bush administration, and the distinct, metallic tang of other people's anxiety. I've breathed this air for 8 years. To the regulars, I'm Patricia, the fixture behind window 3, the one with the sensible cardigans and the bifocals on a chain, one who never rolls her eyes when Mrs. Higgins brings in a jar of pennies that smell like cat pee. To the corporate overlords, I'm employee ID #4920, a depreciating asset with a 401k match that's arguably criminal. But here's the punchline nobody knows. I own the floor they're standing on. Literally. I don't mean I own it in some spiritual, this is my house sense. I mean my name is on the deed to the commercial block, buried under a shell company my father, a paranoid Vietnam vet with a genius for real estate and a hatred for the IRS, left me when his liver finally filed for divorce from his body. Speaking of divorce, if you want to see how I handle legal battles and petty revenge, go ahead and hit subscribe. It's cheaper than therapy and fuels my caffeine addiction. Thanks. So, while I'm standing here counting out crisp 20s for a guy in a stained FBI, female body inspector t-shirt, I'm also technically the landlord. I hold the lease. I control the lights, the water, and the very air conditioning that keeps these people from sweating through their polyester uniforms. It's a strange power trip, let me tell you. It's like being Batman. If Batman drove a 2014 Honda CR-V and spent his nights watching the Golden Girls instead of fighting crime. I never said a word. Why would I? The rent checks clear every month from Stonehill Credit Union's corporate HQ in Charlotte to PH, Holdings LLC, and I deposit them into a separate account that I like to call the Freedom Fund. I kept the job because I needed the health insurance, and honestly, routine kept me sane after my own divorce. My ex-husband, Todd, a man whose personality was essentially a beige wall, left me for a Pilates instructor named Chaotic Neutral Destiny. The bank was safe, predictable, boring, until Craig. Craig arrived 3 months ago like a fungal infection, slowly at first, then suddenly everywhere and irritating as hell. He was our new branch manager, transferred from some failed satellite office in Florida. He brought that Florida man energy with him. Picture a guy who read The Wolf of Wall Street, but only understood the parts about the drugs and the yelling. He wore suits that were too shiny, cologne that smelled like a locker room caught on fire, and a fake Rolex that ticked so loud I could hear it over the cash counter. Patricia, he'd said on his first day, leaning over my station and invading my personal space with the confidence of a mediocre white man. See, you've been here a while. We're going to shake things up. Efficiency, synergy, disruption. Disruption, I repeated, keeping my face as blank as a fresh sheet of drywall. That sounds energetic, exactly. He snapped his fingers, a sound that made my molars ache. Old ways are dead, Patty. We're pivoting to a high engagement model. He called me Patty. Nobody calls me Patty. My father called me Patricia. The IRS calls me ma'am. My lease agreement calls me lesser. Patty is the name of a woman who brings potato salad to a potluck and gets ignored. But I swallowed it. I smiled that tight customer service smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the one that says, I am visualizing you on fire. Looking forward to it, Craig, I said, and I watched. That's what I do. I'm a sniper with a spreadsheet. I watched him alienate the other tellers, 2 sweet girls fresh out of college who were just trying to pay off their student loans. I watched him cut corners on compliance, waving through check deposits that looked sketchier than a gas station sushi roll. I watched him spend hours in his glass-walled office, feet up on the desk, watching golf tutorials while the line in the lobby backed up to the door. He treated the building, my building, with the same disrespect he treated us. He slammed doors, cranked the thermostat down to Arctic tundra in July, straining the AC unit I had just paid $4,000 to service the previous year. He kicked the baseboards when he was angry. One Tuesday, about a month into the Craig era, I had a meeting scheduled with my leasing agent, a shark named Marcus, who handles the day-to-day for PH. Holdings, so I can remain anonymous. I took my lunch break in my car, parked around the back near the dumpster so no one would see me. So, the tenant in Unit B, the credit union, is asking about remodeling the break room, Marcus told me over the phone. They want to knock down a non-load-bearing wall to create an open-concept collaboration space. I took a bite of my turkey sandwich. Open concept. They can barely collaborate on a lunch order. Did they submit the permits? No permits. And the guy who called, Craig, sounded like he was 5 espressos deep. He said he's got a buddy who can do it cheap on the weekend. My ears perked up. This is the kind of stuff that makes a landlord's eye twitch. Unlicensed contractors, weekend work, no permits. That's a lease violation, specifically Clause 9, Section C, alterations and improvements. Tell him no, I said, wiping a crumb from my lip. Tell him any structural changes require blueprints, licensed bonded contractors, written approval from the landlord 30 days in advance. And Marcus, remind him about the penalty clauses for unauthorized modifications. You got it, boss. You sound cheerful today. Just proactive, Marcus, just proactive. I hung up and walked back into the branch. Craig was standing by the coffee machine, looking like he'd just swallowed a lemon. He glared at me as I clocked back in. Long lunch, Patty, he sneered. It had been exactly 29 minutes. Just handling some personal business, Craig, I said, smoothing my cardigan. Well, hustle up. Time is money. He tossed his empty cup into the recycling bin, which was clearly marked paper only, despite it being plastic. I stared at that cup. It was a small thing, a petty thing, but it was the first pebble in the avalanche. I walked over, fished the cup out, and dropped it into the correct trash can. Everything has its place, Craig, I muttered to nobody. Everyone has their breaking point. The routine was about to break, and unlike the ice cream machine at McDonald's, there wasn't going to be a simple fix. If Craig was a fungal infection, his cousin Tiffany was the antibiotic resistance. She showed up on a Monday morning, chewing gum with a ferocity that suggested the gum owed her money. She was dressed in what I can only describe as clubwear adjacent, skirt that tested the limits of physics, and a blouse that had clearly lost a fight with a bedazzler. Team, Craig announced, clapping his hands together like a seal asking for a fish. This is Tiffany. She's joining us as a senior customer experience associate. She's going to be bringing some fresh Gen Z perspective to the floor. I looked at Tiffany. Tiffany looked at her phone. Senior, whispered Sarah, the teller next to me. I've been here 3 years and I'm still a junior associate. Synergy, Sarah, I whispered back. Don't question the synergy. It didn't take a detective to figure out the dynamic. Tiffany was Craig's cousin or niece or perhaps the daughter of someone Craig owed money to. She had 0 banking experience. She didn't know a debit from a credit. I watched her try to count a stack of ones and lose track at 4. Twice. But here's where the knife twisted. 2 days later, the schedule came out. My hours, my reliable 40 hours a week plus benefits schedule, had been slashed to 28. Just enough to kick me off the full-time benefits package. I marched into Craig's office. He was busy arranging a set of Newton's cradle balls on his desk. Craig, we need to talk about the schedule. He didn't look up. Clack, clack, clack. Ah, Patty, yes, optimization. Corporate is leaning on us to trim the fat. Lean staffing models. I'm not fat, Craig, I said, my voice dropping an octave. The head teller. I balance the vault. I train the new hires. You cut me to part-time. It's temporary, he waved a hand dismissively. Besides, with Tiffany coming on board full-time, we needed to reallocate the budget. She's got a higher base pay, talent acquisition costs, you know. My blood turned into liquid nitrogen. You hired your cousin, who can't count to 10 without using her fingers, at a higher rate than me, and gave her my hours. Whoa, easy with the accusations. Craig stood up trying to loom. He failed. He looked like an angry pug in a Men's Warehouse suit. Tiffany shows promise, and part of your new role will be training her. Consider it a mentorship opportunity. Be a team player, Patty, or, he let the sentence hang there, heavy and gross. Or maybe this fast-paced environment isn't for you anymore. Maybe you're ready for retirement. I stared at him. In my head, I was already writing his eulogy. It was very short. Just said, here lies Craig. He was an idiot. I'll train her, I said, my voice dead flat. I'm a team player. I walked out of that office with a calmness that should have terrified him. If he had any survival instincts, he would have fired me right then. But narcissists don't see threats, they only see audiences. I went back to my station. Tiffany, I said sweetly, let me show you how to file the canceled checks. Ugh, paper is so vintage, she groaned, not looking up from TikTok. Indeed, I said, vintage. Later that afternoon, the AC unit started making a sound like a dying cow. Thump hiss, it was vibrating the floorboards. God, this building is a dump, Craig shouted from his office. Patty, call the HVAC guy. Tell him it's an emergency. I didn't call the HVAC guy. I called the property management file server on my phone while I was in the bathroom. I pulled up the maintenance logs. According to the lease, Clause 6A, tenant maintenance obligations, the tenant, Stonehill Credit Union, was responsible for quarterly filter changes and annual servicing of the HVAC unit. I checked the records. The last service invoice logged was, never. Wait, I dug deeper. I found a scanned invoice in the shared branch folder. Craig was sloppy with his digital files. It was an invoice from Dave's Discount Air and Lube. Dated 3 weeks ago. Description: bypassed compressor safety switch. Added Freon. Cash payment. My heart did a little salsa dance. Bypassing a safety switch? That's not just a lease violation. That's a fire hazard. That's gross negligence. That is grounds for immediate lease termination if deemed a danger to the property. I printed the invoice. I folded it neatly and put it in my purse, right next to my peppermint candies. Craig walked by, sweating through his shirt. Did you call them? On it. I said, I'm handling it personally. Good, and hey, Tiffany needs help balancing her drawer. She's short $500. Of course she is, I smiled. I'll go find it. I wasn't just going to find the money, Craig. I was going to find the exit door for your entire career, and I was going to hold it open for you. There's a specific kind of silence that falls over a battlefield before the artillery starts. That was my life for the next 2 weeks. Outwardly, I was Patricia the doormat. I fetched coffee. I corrected Tiffany's deposit slips, which often looked like they were filled out by a drunk raccoon. I took the verbal abuse from Craig about my lack of hustle when I refused to sprint to the printer. But inwardly, I was the Count of Monte Cristo with a label maker. I started a physical dossier, a black binder. I kept it in my tote bag. Every day it grew fatter. Violation #1, unauthorized subleasing. Craig had let his friend, a guy who sold reconditioned iPhones that were definitely stolen, set up a small kiosk table in the lobby on Tuesdays. Community engagement, Craig called it. Commercial zoning violation, the lease called it. I took photos. Violation #2, fire code. The collaboration space idea hadn't died. Craig had moved a massive, heavy filing cabinet in front of the rear emergency exit to open up the flow. I took a picture of the blocked door, with the red exit sign peeking out sadly from behind the metal monstrosity. Violation #3, sanitation. The cleaning crew had been cut to save money. The bathrooms were becoming a biological experiment. I documented the mold starting to bloom on the ceiling tiles like a gruesome watercolor painting. But the masterstroke was the water damage. I knew the plumbing in this building. I knew that the second floor pipe, right above the server room, had a tendency to sweat if the humidity wasn't controlled. And since Craig had the HVAC running on a bypassed compressor that was failing to dehumidify the air, the conditions were perfect. I went into the server room one morning to check the supply inventory. I looked up. There it was. A damp, dark stain spreading across the acoustic tile. A tiny drip, plip, plip. Most employees would call the manager. I called my property manager, Marcus. Marcus, I whispered, shielding the phone. I'm at the Stonehill branch. As a concerned citizen, and also the owner, I need to report a potential structural failure threatening the electrical systems. We need a formal inspection. Official, by the book. You want the scare the hell out of them inspection or the fix it quietly inspection? Marcus asked. I want the documentation for eviction inspection. Send the most anal retentive inspector we have. Send Bob, one who measures screw depths with a caliper. Bob, got it. He's free Friday. Perfect. Friday is payday. It's the busiest day of the month. You're evil, Patricia. I'm thorough, Marcus. I walked back out to the floor. Craig was holding a staff meeting. He was standing on a chair, literally standing on a swiveling office chair to address us. Numbers are down, he barked. We need to push more auto loans. Tiffany, great job on that one app you got yesterday. Thanks. Tiffany popped her gum. It was my mom, but whatever. Patricia, Craig swiveled toward me. The chair wobbled. I prayed to gravity, but gravity was on a break. You have 0 apps this week. 0, you're the senior teller, you should be leading the charge. I've been busy fixing the compliance logs, Craig. The auditors are due next month. Forget the auditors, he shouted. I handle the auditors, you handle sales. If you can't pivot, maybe you should just go home. Permanently. Room went quiet. Sarah looked at the floor. Tiffany smirked. Are you firing me, Craig? I asked, my voice steady. I'm warning you, he sneered. One more slip-up. One more day of dragging your feet and you're out. There are 10 people lined up to take your job. 10, I raised an eyebrow. For part-time teller position with no benefits and a boss who stands on furniture, I doubt it. His face turned the color of a botched ham. Get 2. Work. I went to my window, opened my drawer. I touched the black binder. Friday, I thought. Just wait until Friday. That afternoon, I sent a text to my lawyer, a woman named Janice who scared me, and I pay her. Me, draft the notice of default and notice to quit. Also, prepare the emergency lockout order based on Clause 14, hazardous conditions/emergency renovation. I'll give the signal Friday. Janice, finally. I've had the paperwork ready since he hired the cousin. You want to sue for damages too? Me. Let's see how Friday goes. I looked up. Craig was trying to high-five a customer who clearly didn't want to high-five him. Yes, I thought. Let's see how Friday goes. Friday arrived with the subtlety of a train wreck. It was the first of the month, which meant social security checks, pension deposits, and the general chaos of people needing their money immediately. The lobby was packed. Air was thick and stale, because the AC unit was now wheezing like a pug with asthma, blowing lukewarm, humid air onto the agitated crowd. The lines snake around the velvet ropes and out the door. Sarah was close to tears. Tiffany was sick, hungover, and had called out, leaving us short-staffed. And Craig? Craig was in full panic mode. But instead of helping, opening a drawer, counting cash, doing his actual job, he was pacing behind the teller line, barking orders like a drill sergeant with a caffeine overdose. Faster, people, let's move it. Churn and burn, he yelled, clapping his hands right behind my ear. I was processing a complex transaction for Mr. Henderson, a man who organized his cash by the serial number year. It took time. You can't rush Mr. Henderson. Patricia, Craig hissed. Why is this taking so long? Just dump it and go. I'm verifying the count, Craig, I said, not looking up. Accuracy is important. Speed is important, he retorted, loud enough for the customers to hear. You're moving like a sloth in molasses. Look at that line. If Tiffany were here, I started. Tiffany isn't here, you are. Do your job. I finished with Mr. Henderson. Have a lovely day, I told him. He gave me a sympathetic look that said, I hope you poison his coffee. The next customer stepped up. A young woman with 3 screaming kids. The noise level was deafening. Heat was rising. I could feel the sweat trickling down my back. I'm going to need to take my lunch break at 1, Craig, I said during a lull. My blood sugar is dropping. Craig looked at me like I had asked for pony. Lunch? Are you joking? Look at this lobby. No lunches today. We power through. Nobody eats until the line is gone. That's illegal, Craig. Labor laws require. I don't care about the labor laws, he shouted. The lobby went silent. Even the screaming kids stopped. I am the manager. I decide who eats. You want a lunch break? Go work at the DMV. You count like a grandma, you complain like a princess, and frankly, you're dead weight. I should have fired you weeks ago. There it was. The silence stretched out, elastic and tense. Every customer was staring. Sarah was freezing, a stack of hundreds in her hand. I looked at Craig, really looked at him. I saw the sweat stains on his cheap suit. I saw the fear in his eyes masked by bravado. He wasn't a leader. He was a scared little boy playing king of the hill. Dead weight, I repeated softly. You heard me, he doubled down because stupid people always double down. Now get back to work or get out. I looked at the clock. 12:45 p.m. Okay, I said. I turned back to my computer. I wasn't processing a transaction. I was closing my terminal. I logged out. What are you doing? Craig demanded. Back to work, I said, just shifting focus. I stood up. I walked to the break room, ignoring his sputtering. I pulled my phone out. My hands weren't shaking, that surprised me. I felt cold, hard, and precise. I dialed Marcus. Do it, I said. The 48-hour notice? Marcus asked. No, I said, watching Craig through the glass partition as he yelled at Sarah. The immediate hazard clause. Emergency closure. The HVAC system is compromised. Fire exits are blocked, and there's structural water damage near the high-voltage lines. It's unsafe for occupancy. Shut it down. Patricia, that's the nuclear option. That means locks changed, power cut, everyone out. Right now, I know, I said. I'm looking at the lease. Clause 14. Landlord reserves the right to immediately suspend occupancy if tenant negligence creates an imminent safety hazard. Okay, Marcus said. I could hear him typing furiously. I'm dispatching the locksmith and the contractor. They're 10 minutes out. I'm emailing the official notice to the branch email and the corporate legal team. Now, thanks, Marcus. Patricia? Yeah, give him hell. I hung up. I walked back to the teller line. I didn't sit down. I stood behind my chair, smoothing my skirt. I thought I told you to get to work. Craig barked, spotting me. I am working, Craig, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent lobby. I'm just waiting for the rest of my team to arrive. What team? Tiffany? No, I smiled, and for the first time it was a genuine smile. My team. While we waited, I let my mind drift through the beautiful, rigid poetry of the commercial lease agreement. Most people think leases are boring. They're not. They are bear traps written in Times New Roman. I had memorized the document my father had drafted in 1998. He didn't trust banks, even though they paid him rent. He wrote leases that were designed to strangle a tenant if they so much as sneezed on the drywall without permission. Clause 4, Section B, Utility Maintenance. Tenant shall maintain all HVAC, plumbing, and electrical systems in good working order. Failure to perform routine maintenance constitutes a material breach. Check. The bypassed compressor invoice in my purse was the smoking gun for that. Clause 9, Section D, Safety and Compliance. Tenant shall not obstruct egress routes or modify safety equipment. Check. The filing cabinet blocking the fire door was a lawsuit waiting to happen. But the one I was using today, the Widowmaker, Clause 14, Emergency Access and Possession. In the event of gross negligence resulting in immediate threat to the structural integrity of the property or safety of occupants, e.g., fire hazards, mitigated water intrusion near electrical systems, lessor reserves the right to immediately suspend tenant's right of occupancy, enter the premises, and effectuate repairs at tenant's sole expense. Occupancy shall remain suspended until lessor deems the premises safe. It was a clause designed for meth labs and illegal grow ops. But today it was for Craig. I reached into my tote bag. I bypassed the peppermint candies. I bypassed the bottle of Excedrin, pulled out a thick, white envelope. I had printed the documents the night before, just in case, the notice of emergency possession. It felt heavy in my hand, like a brick. Craig was currently trying to soothe a customer who was shouting about the line. Sir, I understand, but my staff is. He gestured vaguely at me. We're experiencing personnel issues. You're experiencing a management issue, the customer yelled. I'm going to have to ask you to calm down, Craig said, his voice cracking. I looked at the clock. 10 minutes had passed. Outside, a white van pulled up to the curb. A&B Locksmiths. My dad's old drinking buddy Al ran it. His son, Junior, was driving. Behind it, a black SUV. That would be the site inspector, actually just Marcus in a hard hat and a clipboard, looking officious. I stepped out from behind the teller line. I walked into the middle of the lobby. Patricia, get back in your cage. Craig snapped, not even looking at me. Craig, I said. I didn't shout, but my voice cut through the noise like a diamond cutter. We need to pause transactions. What? Are you insane? He turned on me, his face purple. Get back to your window. No, I said. I'm afraid I can't do that. I held up the envelope. What is that? A resignation letter? He laughed, a manic, hysterical sound. Finally giving up, in a way, I said. I'm resigning from being your employee, but I'm accepting a new position. What position? Walmart greeter? I took a step closer. The customers were watching. The air was heavy with sweat and anticipation. No, Craig, I said. Landlord. I saw the confusion ripple across his face. It didn't compute. It was like a dog trying to understand algebra. Landlord? What are you talking about? The bank rents this place. The bank rents this place from PH. Holdings, I said. PH stands for Patricia Henderson. Saw the realization hit him. It was an instant. It trickled in. PH, Patricia, the way I knew about the HVAC, the way I knew the lease, he stammered, you own everything. I finished. I own the walls, I own the floor, I own the vault, and right now I own you. The front door chimed. Junior the locksmith walked in carrying a drill. Marcus walked in behind him wearing a yellow vest and looking grim. Who are these people? Craig squeaked. My team, I said, handed him the envelope. You've been served, Craig. Craig stared at the envelope. He didn't open it. He looked at me, then at the envelope, then at Marcus, who was already tapping a moisture meter against the wall near the server room. This is a joke, Craig said. This is. You can't do this. I'm the branch manager. And I'm the property owner exercising Clause 14, I said, my voice cool and professional. Marcus, what's the reading? 99% saturation in the drywall, Patricia, Marcus called out, loud enough for the back row to hear. Active leak near the 220-volt conduit. Fire hazard is critical. Junior, I nodded to the locksmith. Secure the entrance. You got it, Patty, Junior said. He marched to the front doors. Folks, I'm gonna need you to clear the doorway. Emergency maintenance. The lobby erupted, not in anger at me, but in sheer confusion. Hey, I need my money. Guy in a construction vest yelled. I turned to the crowd. I didn't need a microphone. I had the voice of a woman who had raised 3 stepchildren and dealt with contractors for 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced. The room quieted down. due to gross negligence by the branch management. I gestured to Craig. The building has developed critical safety hazards involving the electrical and HVAC systems. For your safety, closing the branch immediately. You can't do that, Craig screamed. He lunged toward me. Junior stepped in front of him. Junior is 6'4" and looks like he eats cinder blocks for breakfast. Craig stopped. The hell she can't, Junior rumbled. It's her building, buddy. Craig looked around wildly. Call the police. She's hijacking the bank. I already called the police, I said calmly. To assist with the eviction of unauthorized personnel in a condemned hazardous zone, on their way to escort you out. Eviction? Craig whispered. The word seemed to physically hurt him. Read the letter, Craig, I said. He tore open the envelope. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. He scanned the document. I watched his eyes widen as he read the list of violations. The blocked fire exit, the bypassed compressor, the unauthorized paint, the water damage. This says occupancy is suspended indefinitely, he choked out. Until repairs are made and inspected, I corrected. Which, given the extent of the damage you've caused, should take. Oh, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months. Corporate will kill me. Corporate will fire you, I said. There's a difference. Though with your cholesterol, the stress might do the rest. Sarah, I turned to the other teller, who was watching this with her mouth open. Secure your cash drawer. Lock the vault. Clock out. You'll be paid for the full day. I'll make sure HR knows this wasn't your fault. Okay, Patricia, Sarah said, moving faster than she ever had in her life. No, Sarah, stay there, Craig yelled. I am your boss. Not anymore, Sarah said, slamming the vault drawer shut. Click. Junior, cut the power to the non-essentials, I ordered. Junior walked to the breaker panel in the hallway. I heard the thunk, thunk, thunk of heavy switches being thrown. The overhead fluorescent lights flickered and died. The hum of the computers vanished. Wheezing AC units sputtered and went silent. The branch was plunged into the dim, gray light coming through the windows. The silence was absolute. Craig stood in the semi-darkness, holding the paper. He looked small. He looked deflated. You planned this, he whispered. You set me up. I didn't break the HVAC, Craig, I said. I didn't block the fire door. I didn't treat my staff like garbage. I just provided the rope. You tied the knot. The blue lights of a police cruiser flashed through the front window. Time to go, Craig, I said. Don't forget your Newton's cradle. 2 officers walked in. One of them was Officer Miller. I knew him. He used to date my sister in high school. Small town, big secrets. What's the trouble, Patricia? Miller asked, hitching up his belt. He ignored Craig completely. Landlord-tenant dispute involving safety hazards, officer. Have issued an emergency suspension of occupancy under the lease terms. Mr. I gestured to Craig. Mr. Miller here is refusing to vacate the unsafe premises. It's my branch. Craig spluttered. She's just a teller. She's having a psychotic break. I have the deed and the signed lease agreement right here, I said, handing Miller the clipboard Marcus had been holding. Here is the independent inspector's report declaring the electrical system an immediate fire risk due to water intrusion caused by tenant negligence. Miller glanced at the clipboard. He looked at the water stain on the ceiling. He looked at the blocked fire exit. Looks pretty cut and dried to me, Miller said. Sir, if the owner says the building is unsafe, you have to leave. Now. But the money, the customers. The vault is locked, I said. Customers are being directed to the downtown branch. The only thing left here is you, creating a disturbance. Sir, Miller put a hand on his handcuffs, not unlatching them, just resting it there. A suggestion, don't make this a trespassing charge. Craig looked at me one last time. There was no arrogance left, just hate, pure, distilled hate. You're going to regret this, he hissed. I'll sue you. Stonehill will sue you into the ground. Get in line, I said. A divorce lawyer needs a workout. He grabbed his jacket. He grabbed his Newton's cradle. He didn't look at Sarah. He walked out the door, Officer Miller trailing him like a bored babysitter. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the crowd outside, who had been watching through the glass, started booing. I don't think they fully understood what was happening, but people love to boo a man in a suit being escorted out by cops. Junior, change the locks, I said. On it. Sound of the drill biting into the metal of the front door was the sweetest music I had ever heard. I turned to Sarah. She was clutching her purse. I'm sorry about the job, Sarah, I said. Are you kidding? She let out a breathy laugh that was terrifying, but also kind of amazing. Did you really just shut down the whole bank? I'm renovating, I corrected. And hey, when I reopen, I might need a manager. One who knows how to treat people. Her eyes went wide. I'll keep my phone on, you do that. I walked over to the front door. Junior handed me the new key. It was shiny, brass, heavy. I stepped outside. I taped a sign to the glass. I had printed it in 48-point bold font. Closed for emergency renovations due to severe maintenance neglect. Please visit the downtown branch. Management, I stood on the sidewalk. Craig was in his Audi, furiously screaming into his phone. The customers were dispersing, grumbling but moving on. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Area code 704, Charlotte, corporate headquarters. I let it ring. Then I let it ring again. I walked to my car, got in, and turned on the radio. Danny DeVito was doing a commercial for Jersey Mike's subs. So anyway, I started blasting. I muttered to myself, chuckling. I drove to the nearest liquor store and bought a bottle of the good bourbon. The stuff that costs more than Craig's shoes. Didn't answer the phone until Monday. By then, I had 17 voicemails. 3 were from Craig threatening, 10 were from the regional VP panicked, and 4 were from the corporate legal department confused. I called the legal department first. This is Patricia Henderson, representing PH Holdings, I said, putting my feet up on my coffee table. I was wearing pajamas. It was 11:00 a.m. Miss Henderson, the lawyer sounded breathless. We have a situation. Our branch staff is reporting a lockout. We need access immediately. This is highly irregular. What's irregular, I took a sip of coffee, is the fact that your branch manager bypassed a safety switch on a 5-ton HVAC unit, creating a fire hazard that violated Clause 6, 9, and 14 of our lease. I have the invoice. I have the inspector's report. I have photos of the blocked fire exits. Silence on the other end. Lawyers know when they've stepped in a bear trap. We were not aware of these actions, the lawyer said, his voice dropping the aggression. Ignorance of your employees' actions doesn't void the lease, counselor. The building is currently unsafe. I have contractors scheduled to strip the drywall and replace the electrical conduits starting Wednesday. The branch will remain closed until the work is done. Estimated timeline, 4 months. 4 months. Can't have a branch closed for 4 months. The revenue loss? Then you should have hired a manager who didn't commit gross negligence, I said. Oh, and per the lease, you're on the hook for the repairs. I'll send the estimate. It's looking like $80,000. Plus lost rent. We'll sue, he tried. It was a weak reflex. Go ahead. I'll countersue for endangerment of the property and breach of contract. I'll leak the photos of the moldy break room to the local health department and the local news. Channel 5 loves a bank risks customer safety story. Longer silence. What do you want, Miss Henderson? I want the lease renegotiated, I said. The current rate is 2010 market value. I want 2024 rates, triple net. And I want a clause that gives me veto power over any future construction. And the repairs, you pay them. Up front. I'll have to take this to the board. You do that. I'll be here watching Danny DeVito memes. 2 days later, the news filtered down through the grapevine, Sarah. Craig was fired, not let go. Fired, for cause, gross misconduct. He tried to claim I sabotaged him, but the invoice with his signature on the cash payment to the HVAC hack was hard to argue with. Last I heard, he was selling solar panels door-to-door in the next county. Tiffany. It lasted 2 days at the downtown branch before she was caught vaping in the vault and let go. The bank caved. They had no choice. The location was too prime to lose, and the PR nightmare of a safety scandal was too risky. They signed the new lease. My rental income tripled overnight. But the best part, the reporter. A local journalist had seen the commotion on Friday and the angry Facebook posts from customers. She tracked me down. Are you the owner? She asked, standing in my driveway. I am, I said. The bank claims this is a routine renovation. Customers are saying the manager was escorted out by police. What's the truth? I smiled. The truth is, buildings have standards. Sometimes you have to tear out the rot to save the foundation. Can I quote you? Sure. Just spell my name right on the check. It's been 3 weeks. The branch is gutted. The drywall is gone, exposing the studs. The ugly carpet is ripped up, revealing the concrete slab. Air smells like sawdust and victory. I'm sitting on a folding chair in the middle of what used to be the lobby. The HVAC unit has been replaced with a top-of-the-line carrier system. It hums so quietly you can barely hear it. Sarah is coming back as the assistant manager when we reopen. We're hiring a new branch manager. I have veto power on the hire. The first candidate walked in wearing a shiny suit, and I immediately said next, looking for someone who wears cardigans and knows how to count. My freedom fund is looking less like a safety net and more like a fortress. I bought a boat. I don't sail, but I like sitting on it and drinking wine while not answering my phone. People ask me if I miss it. The routine, the teller line, being Patricia the invisible. I don't. I realized that for 8 years, I was counting other people's money while letting them discount my worth. Let a man in a polyester suit treat me like furniture because I thought it was safer to be the wall than the sledgehammer. I was wrong. Being the sledgehammer is way more fun. I took one souvenir from the demolition. Craig's Newton's cradle. I found it in the trash bin behind the building. I have it on my desk at home now. It reminds me that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You push me, I push back. You cut my hours, I cut your power. I to screw me, I screw your lease. Physics, it's a beautiful thing. So here's to the invisible women. The tellers, the admin assistants, the ones you walk past without seeing. Be careful. We might own the building, and we definitely have the keys. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a date with a Danny DeVito marathon and a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Don't forget to scrub that subscribe button like I scrubbed Craig from the payroll. Stay petty, Reddit. Patricia, the landlord.
And that's how it all played out. Funny how life can twist itself into knots and then somehow straighten out again.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening and being here.